This right here was good. Okay, this Netflix documentary, I think it's called Beauty and the Beaster, Bester. This South African documentary docu-series was 3 episodes. And Netflix, y'all dropped it on a Friday just so we can have something to binge and watch and eat up on. Okay. Now, if you are new here, I'm Denise Brady. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist who loves reality TV, documentaries, pop culture, so many different things. Okay, so many different things. Now, when I saw that this was a South African docu-series, I'm like, okay, we need to give them some support because sometimes some of their shows, different things don't get a lot of just hits and people watching it. So I'm like, let me check into this. You got love, you got a sociopath, and you got a bunch of crimes. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of a history of this case. If you do not have Netflix or you haven't watched it, tap in. Make sure you hit that like, you subscribe, turn on the notification bell for all notifications, all of them. Okay, all of them. Now let's peep game. Okay, now this man has used Facebook to manipulate, to groom, to love bomb, to psychologically torture and abuse women, to also scam. And now his first couple crimes involved him being a rapist. Okay. And unfortunately, one of his victims is no longer here anymore. So he was in prison for that crime. And then, oh, Dr. Nandy comes along. And Dr. Nanny is a well to do influencer, motivational speaker, in the limelight, having dinners, brunches with celebrities. And you would never guess that she would be involved with a man like this, a sociopath. Okay. And so in this video, we're going to get into some of the things that they did, but also how easy it is for a woman to get caught up in this. So I think we see sometimes a love after lockups, and you're wondering, how is it that women fall for criminals? How is it that these relationships happen? It's plenty of people, baby girl, who were on death row, married, fell in love after they got the sentence, had kids after, because there are women out there just like Dr. Nandy, and we're going to dig into it, okay? But first, let's get into a little bit of background on the case. Now, he was in prison, a South African prison, and she began to visit him. And I'm sure he reached out through Facebook. You know, Facebook is the new like little place for criminals, people who really don't got nothing to do with their time but prey on people to prey. It's a feeding ground. It is very much a feeding ground for different people to get their whatever they want. It's somebody on Facebook who ain't got nothing to do, who will eat up the attention, get sucked into it because it's an escape from their real lives. And so Dr. Nanny started visiting him and they developed a relationship. Some might say they were even married. Okay. And even though he was on, I believe, a life sentence, she saw past that. And we're gonna get into why she saw past that. But, ultimately he felt like prison was beneath him and he wanted out. So Dr. Nandy, after years of grooming, psychological manipulation, love bombing, she put together a plan with him to help him escape. And you're like, oh, okay, like he escaped in just a car. Oh no, they had a master plan that involved bodies, 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 bodies. Okay. Now, Dr. Nandy would go to the local, I want to say crematorium, but the morgue and claim bodies. Yes, y'all, claim bodies. Okay. She would claim bodies, and no one, for some reason, no one really thought, what is this woman doing claiming these different bodies? She would say she was the husband, or they were a family, she was a family member of some of these bodies, and they would just release them to her. Bodies. Okay. Note that, bodies. All right. So, okay, she would allegedly bury these bodies, through a funeral home. They had caskets. Okay. And then one day, TK, the man, is in prison, and there's a news story that he was burned alive in his cell. Y'all see where I'm going? He was burned alive in his cell. And you're probably wondering, how do you burn yourself alive in a cell? Masterful thinking, planning, opportunity, manipulation. So the world thinks that, oh, this body that was in a cell was his, that he burned himself alive. Okay. And for the longest time, people thought he committed suicide. Oh, no, no. Okay. Throughout this documentary, we actually find out that those bodies, those bodies, one of them magically appeared in the cell next to his. Okay, magically appeared. And then on that night that he unalived himself by setting himself on fire, that body was moved into his cell. He put on other clothes and got out. Yes. With the help of this doctor who was an influencer, who had everything for herself, who was giving people motivation to keep going on their journey. All right. And throughout this time, people somehow figure out that the DNA don't match. Like whose body is that really? Because the DNA is not DNA in. Okay, Dana is not Dana in. And then so people put the pieces together that he escaped. And the craziest part about this is that they were living a life hiding in plain sight. Living in a mansion, seen out together, living it up. Not like they had destroyed lives, not like she had dropped her kids off at school and disappeared with this man. Still, rubbing elbows with celebrities, scamming folks out of millions. Okay. Yeah. They realized that body in the cell had no soot in its lungs, which means that there was no smoke in the lungs. So you were not alive when you inhaled all that smoke. The DNA don't match. And it turns out that the body was moved through the help of course, CO officers, correctional officers. But throughout this whole time, they are living this life. Not calling her kids. She was married at the time. Oh, forget the husband. This my man's. This my man's. Okay. And I think through charm and charisma, women forget the dirty deeds that these men that they fall in love with in prison, on the run, whatever, they become the Bonnie and Clyde show. They become Bonnie and Clyde and forget about everything else. When this man spoke throughout the documentary, because they had a recording of when he first went to prison for the murder, the first woman that he killed. The way he spoke about that, he said he would do it again. He had no remorse. That to me is a true sociopath. Inflicting hurt, physical pain on another person without any type of facial expression or remorse. Okay. He is disconnected from reality. He lives in his own world and he brings people into it. Okay, I think he was able to bring in Dr. Nandi into it. And so let's get into how a woman could fall for this type of man. Why do people fall for sociopaths? It's that charm, that charisma. Sociopaths often come off as confident and magnetic. And I think TK is somebody who we saw scamming people while on the run, positioning himself as the owner of a multi-million-dollar company while he was still in prison, on Zoom, wearing a suit. Okay. And then there's also love bombing. And I think Dr. Nandi was love bombed by this overwhelming affection. I don't know what the gifts really were because he was in prison, but promises early in their relationship. And I think Dr. Nandi is somebody who is book smart, but not street smart. And even though she on the outside looked like she had it all, on the inside, she was probably empty and wanting connection. The key to all these different stories that I read about, I see in my clients, um, all these documentaries, the key is that people want connection. And sometimes they will do anything to find connection. Whatever was not happening in her marriage and her life, I think TK, this sociopathic man, reflected back those values, dreams, and interest. Because you gotta think, even when they were on the run, he was out, they were living the life. They had a mansion girl. He was giving her a little bit of that thrill that in her day-to-day, probably mundane life, she wasn't getting. And I think sometimes women seek that once in a lifetime like thrill. And also, since she's a doctor, a motivational speaker, partners who are highly empathetic. I think she was probably one of those people. I think that TK exploited her vulnerability and her willingness to provide empathy and see past people's um, imperfections. And it's sad because I think she gave up her whole life. And I'm not sure if she ignored the red flags, didn't see them, didn't care for them. But that's another thing. What are some of the red flags of dating a sociopath? Y'all need to know because y'all be on these apps and now they have Facebook dating, which don't really seem like it got too many parameters. And I think Facebook dating is another place where we see on these crime documentaries, 48 hours, that people met where they meet on Facebook. And they get scammed out of their retirement plans and all these things from Facebook dating. And some of the red flags, I'm gonna let y'all know. I'm gonna let y'all know. Inconsistency in their stories, constantly lying, gaslighting, lack of guilt or accountability. TK throughout this, to me, had no accountability. For what? I've been rewarded by my dirty deeds. Another red flag is that the relationship moves very fast. She was leaving her regular life to go visit him constantly. And I think through years of manipulation, guilt, and shame, he had control, years of control to groom her, isolate her, and take her from her family. And when they played some of the tapes, man, you heard him threaten her life. He said, if you ever leave me, if you ever block me, I will with my bare hands rip you apart. He put the fear of God in her and played on that fear. And so sometimes you watch these shows, Love After Lockup, you see these different people in relationships. I think even the Menendez brothers have wives. People sometimes see past that and see in their eyes the person, the people behind the crimes. Sometimes a project. Maybe I can be that one to fix them, save them. I see the child in them who wasn't loved. They didn't come from a good home. All I need is a good woman. And that's how they lure you in. Playing and weaponizing your empathy, your naivete, seeing the things that are missing from your life and making you believe I can fulfill them. But I think a lot of these dating apps, you hear the stories all the time. There are not a lot of safety parameters to protect people from things like this. Since January, we've heard so many stories about women going on dates for the first date and now returning home. And it's sad because all these women wanted was a date. But I think we need more safety on the hinges, the Facebook dating, you know. match. You don't hear too much about match as much, but there are people out there living double lives, luring people out there for their own selfish reasons. The fact that she left her kids, her husband, moved bodies, y'all, and want to run with the man who was a known rapist. Just think about that. It doesn't happen overnight either. It takes time to groom the person. And what are some key differences between a sociopath and a psychopath? Because I think people kind of interchange these things, these two different types of people, and they are different. I think with a sociopath, more impulsive and erratic, they can form limited attachment, but are manipulative. And we saw him manipulate her, yell at her, and he heard her little voice at the end of some of those tapes, like, yes, okay, I promise. And the behavior tends to be reactive and chaotic, which we also saw. And I wonder about his development. Because another thing is it's also shaped by trauma, neglect, poor attachment, unstable upbringing. Now, we didn't hear too much about um, his upbringing. We heard a little bit more about hers. But whereas a psychopath is calculated, cold, highly controlling, and they're incapable of really forming genuine emotional connections. The connection that they do form are for self gratification. What am I going to get from this connection? Their behaviors often are premeditated, strategic, and manipulative. And I think it's the manipulation piece that people often interchange sociopath and psychopath. Okay. But you have to think a big difference between a sociopath and a psychopath is that a psychopath is calculated and cold and highly controlled, whereas a sociopath is impulsive and erratic. So I think people can probably mask more of the psychopath than the sociopath. And I think the sociopaths are more of the people that you meet online and you were like, damn, he really turned out to be a psychopath? I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. There's also a strong biological component and neurological component. The not caring about authority. Maybe when they were younger, they had some antisocial personality traits, some antisocial behaviors. Watch a couple episodes of Criminal Minds. Okay. I feel like a lot of people they deal with on that show are very much psychopathic in nature. Think of psychopaths think of sociopaths as hot-tempered con artists and psychopaths as cold-blooded and strategic. You might have somebody in your life that kind of fits some of these things. Hmm? Do you have somebody in your life who kind of reminds you of this? But I think that psychopaths are hiding in plain sight. Some of them you might think like, huh, when it comes out that they did these crimes, there was always something off about him. Like, look at the guy in the Ohio murder case. I think people get that, like, there was something always off about him. You're hearing all the stories now from people who study with him, work with him. Like, huh, it all makes sense now. But by the time people really connect the dots, it's most of the time it's too late and another person has been hurt. And this whole case to me left also let's talk about the psychological impact on partners, the erosion of self esteem and self trust. I think that Dr. Nanny on the outside, people developed a parasocial relationship with the image. But Dr. Nanny, the person, they were two different people. I think the person was naive, insecure, and lost. But the image came out strong, secure, somebody you can look up to and believe in. And the whole dynamic between them, Dr. Nanny was the trust. People saw her and came into the deals that they were trying to create through the trust, and he was the manipulator. Like, I'm gonna use you as the shield, as the face of us to get people to come in so I can take advantage of them. And I'm sure through a lot of gaslighting, like we talked about, anxiety, maybe she had some depression or trauma in her relationships with her parents and her own adult childhood and adulthood, that she probably became addicted to the cycle of highs and lows in their relationships. And I see so often that people get caught up in the highs of a relationship that they forget the lows. They think about going back to the person. 'Cause I remember the highs, how he made me feel, how she made me feel, the good parts of our relationship that I don't think about the other stuff. I just think about how I felt in that relationship. And that's how you either get stuck and don't leave, or you continue the cycle of going back. Because a master manipulator knows how to make you remember the good times, the good times. So ask yourself, even though you might have not been dating a sociopath or a psychopath, have you been with someone who was masterful at manipulating you to come back, to stay? Lots of these traits and things that we see in this, you see in real life. This is not a, oh, I can't believe this happened to this woman, to him. It happens to a lot of people. It just does not look as extreme as him. You might have friends who are in relationships like this and you're trying to help them get out, but they're not ready to see that they're being groomed, they're being manipulated, they're being abused verbally to stay over here and stay isolated. Because if you get too close to other people, you might leave me. They might trick you. They might help you see the lights. And for my benefit, I can't have you see the light. I really can't. Okay. And it was sad to watch her family feel like the person that they loved, her husband, her brother, her father, that Dr. Nandy, the young Nandy, the sister, was no longer there. She was no longer there. And it's crazy to me that when they were captured, because they were able to go all over Africa and not get caught. But I believe they finally got caught in Tanzania. I think that's where they finally got caught. Correct me if I'm wrong. The South African court system is so crazy because they got to be in court and sit next to each other, talk, kiki, giggle. Like, they didn't just commit all these crimes, they weren't hurting people. Like, he isn't a cold-blooded killer. It just shows you how much charm and charisma he has still. But I can't believe in South Africa, the way the court system is, they were able to sit next to each other. Small talk. Ain't no way in America that would ever happen. Okay, that would ever happen. But their families were just kind of like watching them in court laugh. His arrogance, him speaking like this is below me. Okay. And her kikiing with him, like, oh, I miss you. I miss you. I miss us. Mama just watching it on the screen, daddy, brother. the frustration, the hurt, and everybody around, and the domino effect is everyone just has to kind of sit with it and deal with it. And so they were convicted. He went back to serving his life sentence. I believe she got 10 years. And he still wants access to a laptop and the internet. He is so out of touch with reality. And she gave up her whole life. But I wonder, similar to other people we've seen go to prison, do their time, those who look like this get out and they can write a book, they can still be on TV. Do you think the same reception will be for her? Now they tried to talk to her to become to be a part of the documentary, and she declined. He tried to stop Netflix from creating this documentary because he felt like it was defamatory to his character. His image is everything. But I think most, sociopaths and probably psychopaths too, that ego is everything. That ego. And I think unfortunately, once someone kind of triggers the hurt in that ego, you don't see them anymore. They need that ego to be shining for the world to feed into it, for their partners to feed into it. And I wonder now, do they have any? I guess he doesn't have access to a laptop or anything, probably a phone. Do you guys think that they still have contact together now? But this falling in love with a sociopath isn't about being stupid or weak. And that's how Love After Lockup, those shows make you think that they're just dumb, weak people. It's really about human psychology and being hijacked by manipulation. And I hope that there's some healing for her family, the other victims. But I think healing requires self compassion, education about manipulation, and hopefully some trauma therapy. A lot of therapy, as I always say. And I want people who are watching this who might be survivors of manipulators, sociopaths, psychopaths. You did not fail at seeing the signs. You were targeted. You were targeted. But I want to know your thoughts. Did you watch the documentary? All the twists and turns? Bodies, bodies, bodies. They're all dead. But anyone I think could fall for a manipulator. You have to be able to have a keen sense of self, know who you are, trust your gut. Sometimes your gut and logic will not be in sync, but you have to recognize what's really happening, what is my gut saying, what is logically in front of me, reality testing, behaviors, actions versus words, because Dr. Nandi is a lot of women, and this could really happen to anybody. All right. But it was a good documentary. Y'all did that. Okay, a lot of twists, turns. I was not expecting a lot of things that happened, but it was good. Okay, it was good. But let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Tap in. I think these South African dramas, stories, documentaries are starting to become more prominent on at least my algorithm. I hope that Netflix is pouring more money into having some of these South African narratives and stories come into play. I hope you guys give it a chance because it was really good. Okay. If you got to this far in the video, where you're watching from, okay, put some stars in the chat. And I look forward to hearing from you guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe, that like, you turn on all your notifications, and your girl will be back in another video. All right. Bye.